For 20 years, you watched me. You saw me standing in the background at my sister's weddings. You saw me holding their babies. You saw me gardening, renovating, and smiling, always smiling. But you also heard the whispers. Why is Jana still single? Is she trapped? Will she ever be a mom? I heard them too. And honestly, there were nights I cried myself to sleep asking God the same questions. Being the Cinderella of the family wasn't just a nickname, it felt like my reality. I watched everyone else leave the nest while I stayed behind. But God's timing is funny. Just when the world wrote me off as the permanent aunt, my life changed in the blink of an eye. I left the big house. I found a love worth waiting for. And now, I am holding the one thing I wanted more than anything. I'm Jana, and after 36 years of waiting, I am finally ready to tell you the story of my freedom, my marriage, and my miracle baby, Archie. If you Google my name, Jana Duggar, one of the first things you'll see is a nickname the internet gave me years ago, Cinderella Duggar. It started as a joke, I think. People saw me in the background of every episode. I was the one holding the crying baby while my mom gave an interview. I was the one sewing the bridesmaid dresses late at night. I was the one making the giant casseroles while the boys played outside. But for me, that nickname wasn't funny. It was my life. In a family of 19 kids, roles get assigned very early. Some are the loud ones, some are the pranksters. I was the reliable one, the steady one. I remember being 12 years old, standing at the sink, washing a mountain of dishes that never seemed to end. I looked out the window and saw other kids riding bikes, and I felt this heavy weight on my shoulders, a sense of duty that was far too big for a 12-year-old girl. I was taught that joy comes from serving others, J-O-Y, Jesus, others, yourself. Yourself comes last. So I put myself last for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years. I became the keeper of the big house. I knew where every permission slip was. I knew which toddler was allergic to strawberries. I knew how to fix the leaking faucet in the girls' room because nobody else would do it. People praised me for it. They said, "Oh, Jana has such a servant's heart." But they didn't see the nights I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if serving was all I was ever going to do. Was I a daughter, or was I just the help? That label stuck to me like glue, and for a long time I didn't know how to peel it off. The hardest part wasn't the work. It was the goodbyes. I am the eldest daughter. In a normal world, the eldest usually flies the nest first. But in the Duggar world, things happen differently. First, it was Jill. I stood by her side as her maid of honor, fixing her veil, smiling for the cameras. I was genuinely happy for her. She was escaping. She was starting her own life. Then Jessa, then Jinger, then Joy. Even little Justin and Jed, they all found partners. They all packed their boxes. Every wedding was a production. I was the planner. I arranged the flowers. I altered the dresses. I coordinated the reception. I poured my energy into making their days perfect. But then the wedding would end. The guests would leave. The couple would drive off in their just-married car, and I would go back to the girls' room. I remember the day Jessa moved out. Our room, which used to be filled with chatter and laughter late into the night, suddenly felt huge and quiet. I looked at the empty beds. One by one, they were emptying out, and I was still there. People would come up to me at these weddings, well, meaning church ladies, and say, "Don't worry, Jana! Your Prince Charming is coming!" I wanted to scream. I didn't want a Prince Charming. I just wanted a life. I wanted to be chosen. Watching my little sisters become mothers while I was still asking my dad for permission to go to the grocery store. That was a specific kind of pain that is hard to explain unless you've lived it. So, where do you go when your house is full of noise, but your heart feels empty? For me, it was the garden. I started spending more and more time outside. I convinced my dad to let me build a greenhouse. He agreed, probably because he thought it was a good way to save money on groceries. But for me, it was survival. That greenhouse became my sanctuary, my church. Plants are different from people. They don't have expectations. They don't ask you to fix their hair. They don't scream for a bottle. You just give them water and light, and they grow. I remember spending hours in there, just potting soil. The smell of the earth grounded me. I would talk to God in that garden. I would say, Lord, am I like this seed? Am I buried in the dark so I can grow, or am I just buried? I learned to use power tools. I built arbors. I laid pathways. It gave me a sense of control. Inside the house, I had no control over the chaos. But out here, if I wanted to plant a rose bush, I planted a rose bush. That garden saved my sanity. It was the one place where I wasn't Jana the sister or a Jana the daughter. I was just Jana. While I was hiding in the garden, the internet was busy writing fanfiction about my life. Being a single woman in your 30s in the public eye is weird. People cannot accept that you are just single. There has to be a reason. There were so many rumors. They said I was secretly in love with Tim Tebow. Sigh, met him once. That was it. They said I was waiting for Lawson Bates. And then there were the rumors about my best friend, Laura. Laura moved in with us for a while to help with projects. She is like a sister to me. We are best friends. But the internet decided that because I wasn't marrying a man, I must be in a relationship with her. It was hurtful, not because there is anything wrong with who people are, but because it took away my ability to just have a friend. Every time we posted a photo, the comments were flooded. Are they together? Coming out soon. We eventually had to stop posting together as much. I had to distance myself from one of my only sources of support just to stop the gossip. I wanted to shout, I am just waiting. I haven't the right guy yet. But in my family, you don't address rumors. You just ignore them. So I swallowed the frustration and kept smiling. We have a system in our family called the buddy system. It sounds cute, right? Buddies. But the reality is, it's a nice word for parentification. When you are an older girl in the Duggar house, you get assigned a buddy team. These are the younger siblings you are responsible for. You dress them, you bathe them, you help them with school, you put them to bed. My mom, she was there physically. But emotionally, with that many kids, it is impossible for one mother to do it all. So we became the mothers. I raised the lost girls. Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, Josie. I raised the lost boys. Jason, James. I remember nights when Josie was having seizures as a baby. I was the one up with her. I knew her meds. I knew her triggers. I love those kids. They are my heart. But it's a confusing feeling to look at a child who is technically your brother, but feels like your son. By the time I was 30, I felt like I had already raised 10 kids. I was exhausted. I had stretch marks on my heart, if not my body. And I think deep down, that's part of why I waited so long to marry. I was tired. I had done the mothering thing since I was 6 years old. I needed to breathe before I could even think about doing it for myself. People assume that because Stephen and I got married quickly once the news broke, that it was a whirlwind romance. Actually, I've known the Wissmanns for years. Our families have been friends for a long time. We ran in the same circles. I had seen Stephen at conferences, at family gatherings. He was just Stephen, one of the Wissmann boys. Nice, polite, talented. Honestly, for a long time, I was so guarded that I didn't let myself look at anyone that way. I had built up walls. I thought, he's younger than me. He lives in Nebraska. It's too complicated. But then things shifted. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was a conversation. We were sitting around a campfire at a gathering, and he started talking about his work, about his life. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to perform. I didn't have to be Jana the caretaker. He looked me in the eye and asked me what I liked, not what my family liked. What I liked. It was slow. It was steady. It wasn't the dramatic romance novels my sisters read. It was better. It was safe. When we decided to start courting, I made one rule: no cameras, no Instagram, no announcement. I had watched my siblings' relationships get dissected by the world. Every side hug analyzed. Every outfit critique. If a courtship failed, it was public humiliation. I couldn't do that. I was 34. I needed this to be real, not a storyline. We went to extreme lengths to hide it. Stephen would fly in, and we would meet at secret locations. I wore hats and sunglasses at the airport. My brothers, bless them, helped run interference. They would act as decoys so I could slip away to FaceTime him. For months, the internet was speculating about me, but they were looking in the wrong direction. Those months of secrecy were the best months of my life. We got to know each other without the pressure of a million strangers weighing in. We argued, we made up, we laughed, and nobody knew. It was our little bubble. I remember thinking, if this works out, I'm not telling anyone until the ring is on my finger. I wanted to protect him from the chaos of being a Duggar in law for as long as possible. You've seen the Duggar proposals. Scavenger hunts, drones, giant banners, everyone hiding in the bushes. That is lovely for some people. It wasn't for me. Stephen knew that. He knew I hated being the center of attention. It happened in Nebraska. We were just walking. No camera crew. No drone buzzing overhead. Just the wind and an open field. He stopped, took my hand, and got down on one knee. He didn't give a long sermon. He just told me he loved me, he respected me, and he wanted to build a life with me. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. There was no producer saying, "Can you do that again for the lighting?" There was no mic pack taped to my back. It was just us. I looked down at the ring, classic, simple, perfect, and I felt a chain breaking. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was engaged. Moving out at 34 is different than moving out at 20. Most people pack up a dorm room. I was packing up 30 years of a life lived in one house. I went into the girls' room, the room I had shared with all my sisters. I looked at the bed where I had slept for decades. I looked at the closet where I kept the clothes I sewed for everyone else. It was emotional, not just because I was leaving, but because of what I was leaving behind. My youngest sisters, Jennifer, Jordan, Josie, they stood in the doorway watching me pack. They were crying. I was their second mom. Leaving them felt like abandoning them. I had to sit them down and say, I am not disappearing. I am just getting married. You can call me every day. I packed my gardening tools. I packed my journals. Walking out that front door for the last time as a resident, it was heavy. That house held my trauma, my joy, my service, and my youth. Closing the door felt like closing a book that had been open for far too long. We planned the wedding in record time, and we kept it quiet. I didn't want a televised spectacle. I didn't want 1,000 guests. I chose a classic, elegant dress. No modesty panels added later, just a dress that fit me and made me feel beautiful. The ceremony was at a venue called The Grand in Arkansas. It was classy. It was grown up. Walking down the aisle toward Stephen, I didn't see the guests. I didn't see my parents. I just saw him. When the pastor pronounced us man and wife, the relief was physical. I wasn't Jana Duggar, the single one, anymore. I was Mrs. Wissmann. We danced. We ate good food. We laughed. There were no producers telling us where to stand. For the first time in my life, my biggest milestone belonged 100% to me. And driving away with Stephen that night, heading toward Nebraska and a new life, I finally exhaled. Moving to Nebraska was a culture shock. Not because it's a different state, but because of the silence. I grew up in a house that was never quiet. From the moment I woke up at 600 a.m. until I crashed at midnight, there was noise. Babies crying, pianos practicing, industrial mixers running, phones ringing. There was always a crisis to solve, a meal to cook, a sibling to referee. Then, suddenly, I was in Nebraska, in a house with just 2 people. I remember the first week. Stephen went to work, and I was alone in the house. I stood in the middle of the living room and waited for someone to call my name. Jana, can you find my shoes? Jana, I'm hungry. But nobody called. It was dead silent. At first, it terrified me. I felt like I was forgetting something. I kept checking my phone, checking the clock, feeling guilty that I wasn't doing enough. But slowly, I realized this is just what normal life is. I could drink a cup of coffee while it was still hot. I could read a book without hiding in the bathroom. I could go to the grocery store and buy just 2 apples instead of a crate of 50. Nebraska gave me permission to stop running. It taught me that my value wasn't in how much work I could do in a day, but just in being Stephen's wife and being myself. We wanted children, but at 34, almost 35 when we got married, you know the clock is ticking. I had watched my sisters get pregnant on their honeymoons. I assumed maybe it would happen fast for me too. But month after month, nothing. I tried not to stress. I told myself God's timing, but the fear creeps in. Did I wait too long? Did I miss my window? It was a Tuesday morning. I wasn't feeling great, but I thought it was just the change in weather. Stephen was already at work. I took the test. I didn't even pray over it this time because I didn't want to get my hopes up. I set it on the sink and went to fold laundry. When I walked back in and looked, I froze. 2 lines. I sat on the bathroom floor and just stared at it. It wasn't the screaming excitement you see in movies. It was a quiet, holy shock. I touched my stomach. It was flat. It felt the same, but everything had changed. I wasn't just Jana anymore. I was a mom. Hair is the thing nobody tells you about getting pregnant in your mid-30s. The medical terms are rude. I went to my first doctor's appointment, and on my chart, in big bold letters, it said advanced maternal age. Technically, it's called a geriatric pregnancy. Geriatric! I'm 36, not 80. But the doctors were serious. They talked about risks, chromosomal issues, preeclampsia, complications, because of my family history, Jill's difficult births, Jess's hemorrhages, Joy's loss. I was already anxious. I know too much about what can go wrong. I spent the first trimester holding my breath. Every cramp, every twinge, I thought, is this it? Am I losing him? I didn't tell my family right away. I couldn't bear the thought of telling them good news and then having to untell it. Stephen was my rock. He would hold my hand during the ultrasounds and say, "Look at his heartbeat. He's strong. He's a Wissmann." Navigating pregnancy without my mom right there, without my sisters down the hall. It was scary, but it also forced me to trust my own body and my own doctors. Once we hit the safe zone, the nesting instinct kicked in hard. I have decorated a dozen nurseries. I painted the murals for Jess's kids. I organized the closets for Josh's kids. I built the cribs for Joy. But this time I was painting for my baby. I walked into the spare room in our Nebraska house and thought, what do I want? I didn't want the typical Duggar style. I didn't want bright, chaotic colors or hand-me-down furniture. I wanted calm. I wanted neutrals, creams, soft greens, natural wood. Stephen let me go wild. I built the shelves myself, obviously. I sanded the dresser. I picked out the softest rug I could find. There was a moment where I was hanging a little knit sweater on a hanger, and I realized I don't have to give this back. This is staying here. That nursery became my favorite room in the house. It wasn't just a room for a baby. It was a symbol that it was finally my turn. Everyone wants to know about the name. Will you do the letter J? My parents famously named all 19 of us with the letter J: Joshua, Jana, John, David, Jill, Jessa. You know the list. It's their brand. It's their thing. But Stephen and I, we are the Wissmanns. We aren't the Duggars. We talked about it. Stephen asked, "Do you want to stick with J?" I thought about it for about 2 seconds and said, "No. I love my family, but I wanted a fresh start. I wanted our children to have their own identity, separate from the 19 kids' legacy." We chose the name Archie. It means truly brave. We wanted him to be brave. Brave enough to be himself. Brave enough to step out of the shadows. And yes, I was a little nervous to tell my dad. I thought he might be disappointed that we broke the streak. But when we told them his name is Archie, my dad just smiled and said, "That's a strong name." It felt like permission to be different. It felt like I was finally writing my own story, starting with the very first line, Archie. It started at 200 a.m. Of course, I woke up with that distinct feeling. I had attended enough births to know this isn't a drill. We grabbed the bags, which I had packed 3 weeks early, naturally, and got into the truck. The drive to the hospital in Nebraska was pitch black. Just cornfields and highway. It was so different from the chaotic drives I remembered with my sisters, where 5 people would pile into a van with cameras in our faces. It was just Stephen and me. He held my hand over the center console and prayed. I remember looking out the window into the dark and feeling a wave of panic. Can I do this? I've watched it happen a dozen times, but can I do it? My body was 36 years old. I was tired. But then a contraction hit and instinct took over. The Jana who manages everything disappeared, and the Jana who is a mother stepped in. We walked into the hospital, and for the first time I wasn't the doula. I wasn't the support person holding the ice chips. I was the patient. I checked in under my own name, Mrs. Wissmann. Labor is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter who your family is or how famous you are. It hurts the same. It was long. It was hard. There were moments I wanted to give up. But Stephen, he was amazing. He didn't try to coach me like a strict father. He just supported me like a partner. He wiped my face. He whispered, "You are so strong." And then the moment came. The doctor said, "One more push, Jana." And there he was, Archie. He didn't scream right away. He just let out a little squeak. They placed him on my chest, and the world stopped spinning. He was warm. He was heavy. He had dark hair, just like Stephen. I started crying. Not polite, TV, ready crying. Ugly crying. The kind of sobbing that comes from your soul. All the years of waiting. All the years of changing other people's diapers. All the nights I wondered if I was broken. It all washed away in that 1 second. I looked at Stephen and we both just wept. We didn't need words. We had our son. My parents flew in a few days later. It was a surreal moment. My mom and dad have held 19 babies of their own and dozens of grandkids. But seeing them hold my baby, it hit different. My dad walked in and he looked older, softer. He saw me sitting in the chair with Archie, and he got teary-eyed. He said, "Jana, banana, you did good. My mom took Archie and did her signature rock, the Michelle Duggar bounce. It was nostalgic to watch." But something had shifted in the dynamic. When my mom tried to give me advice, "Oh, you should swaddle him this way," I didn't just automatically say, "Yes, ma'am." I smiled and said, "Actually, Mom, we are doing it this way." It was a small moment, but it was huge. I wasn't the obedient daughter asking for approval anymore. I was the mother of this child. They were the grandparents. The hierarchy had finally changed. Know that Archie is here? People ask me constantly, "How will you raise him? Will you use the blanket training? Will you be strict?" I love my parents. I am grateful for my upbringing. But Stephen and I, we are doing things differently. There will be no blanket training in this house. I want Archie to know boundaries, yes, but I want him to know them through connection, not fear. I grew up in a world where obedience was the highest virtue. If you obeyed, you were good. If you questioned, you were rebellious. I want Archie to question. I want him to have a voice. If he is sad, I want him to cry without fear of being punished for having emotions. We aren't aiming for perfection. We aren't filming a TV show about how well behaved our child is. We are just aiming for love. I've seen what happens when you raise kids under a microscope of rules. It creates distance. I want closeness. So, we are taking the good parts of my heritage, the faith, the love for family, and we are leaving the rest behind. I want to end this story by talking the woman who is watching this right now, the woman who is waiting. Maybe you are single in your 30s. Maybe you are struggling with infertility. Maybe you feel like the Cinderella of your own family, always serving, never chosen. I know how much it hurts when people say, just be patient. I know you want to punch them, but please look at me. I was the girl who was never going to leave. I was the girl everyone pitied. And today, I am sitting in my own home in a quiet state with a man who adores me and a baby who calls me Mama. Your life is not over just because it hasn't started on everyone else's timeline. Don't settle for the first guy just to get out of the house. Wait for the Stephen. Wait for the peace. My story isn't a fairy tale. It's better. It's real. I'm Jana Wissmann. I used to be the girl who waited. Now, I'm the girl who is living. Thank you for loving me through the years. And welcome to the world, Archie.